Amen, amen. Thank you, Eclectic Praise, with that little Mannheim Steamroller twist that you had there. Wonderful, wonderful entry into the message today. Today, it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you our revivalist for this service today. If you'd like to learn more about her, her biography is printed on her books that are for purchase after the service today. But what I really want to say goes well beyond the biography. It speaks to the biography of her heart. Her roots go back to MCCDC on M Street. She is a part of us, and today we welcome you home to this home. You have helped to create this home. Yesterday, she led a wonderful, wonderful retreat, Strategic Compassion. Compassion, the head, and the heart. What I would say about our revivalist today is that she indeed brings both head and heart to her ministry and to her teaching. So as she opens the word for us today, I would invite us to open our heads and our hearts to receive the experience of God that is available to us at this moment through her. So I invite you to take a moment and just touch your head, just to create a space for the mind to be open, for God to work through the intellect that God has given you. Create an open space. And now I invite you to place your hand over your heart. If you can, feel your heartbeat, the love beat, the soul beat, the life beat. Heads and hearts open to the work of God. And now we welcome to this pulpit the Reverend Dr. Carrie Jackson. Welcome home.
It is wonderful to be home. And I thank my brother, Reverend Elder Dwayne, and my sister, Reverend Kathy, for their wonderful invitation and the hospitality. And I've just been having fun. So I know we only have a little bit of time, so I'm going to just jump right in. Where's the sister who read the text? Awesome. Thank you for your music ministry. Awesome. And those of you who are here, you have a part today too. This is not a spectator sport. So there's going to come a time in our conversation together today. I'm going to ask you to respond to some questions, okay? So I've come home. The text that we heard read talks about Jesus coming home. Now, sometimes coming home is not one of the smoother, more pleasant experiences in our lives. When we come home, people are expecting us to operate with the old wineskins. This is how we do it. So we can do all of this new stuff out there, and when we come home, many of us begin acquiescing and doing the thing the way they expect us to do it at home. Jesus comes home, and prior to coming home, chapter 1 talks about all of these incredible things that happen in Jesus' life. First, there is the introduction to John the Baptizer, his cousin, who's preparing the way for Jesus. And then we have the scene of John baptizing Jesus, and before Jesus begins his ministry, the Spirit speaks over him, "You are my beloved with whom I'm well pleased. Note that before he begins his ministry. It's because the one who is speaking to him knows who this one is. Beloved. But then also in chapter 1, Jesus, after being baptized, is driven into the wilderness by the Spirit. Some of us have had wilderness experiences in our lives and we get angry with God about them. But understand, sometimes when we're driven into the wilderness, it is God at work because there's something we need to sit still long enough to hear and to receive. Something about our purpose. We need time in the wilderness. So all of that happens in chapter 1. When we come into chapter 2 begins with its own bang. Jesus forgives a man. Jesus challenges traditions about fasting and eating on the Sabbath and working on the Sabbath and plucking grapes. So here's this Jesus. Now understand, this he's doing at home. He could only do this at home because he spent the time in the wilderness, getting clearer about who he is, about whose he is, and about his purpose. So when we come home, there are some expectations that many of us succumb to. But Jesus, when he's talking with the Pharisees, and I love this text because it could be something on the news pages today. This tension between progress and keeping things the way they are. This tension between service to people and legalisms. So we see that in our presidential race, we see that in our Congress. So many places throughout our society, we see those who are holding tightly onto tradition. This is the way we do it. God wrote it for us to do it this way. And so Jesus models for us what we can do when we know our own purpose. Jesus says to the folks who are saying, no, here's the wineskin you're supposed to use. We're supposed to stay in tradition. And what we see happening in our society is folks trying to put patches of new cloth, patches of new ways of doing things, and sticking it on the old ways of doing things. And Jesus says, no, sisters and brothers, that doesn't work. It might work for a little while that those old and new patches adhere to one another, but then it's going to burst open. And the wine, today I want you to think of the wine that is your life, is your purpose. When you try to patch the old on with the new, your purpose, your God-given purpose, kind of spills out in a wasteful way. So it's easy to see the old and the new patch trying to be stuck on it in our society. It's easy to see that so many churches across America still doing things the same old way, and they say, oh, we just need a young minister. Or, oh, we just need a praise band. But all of the old ways of doing things, all the cliques, all the structures that really disempower people. Oh no, we don't want to change that. Let's just get a praise band. There are so many places you can look at where you see, oh, that's some old wineskin and they done just stuck some new patches on it. But I want you to look at your own life. What are some old wineskins in the way you think that you have been trying to stick some new ways of thinking on it, but you're still overall still holding the old ways of thinking? Well, I just bought an iPhone 7 last week. I am not a techie. Of course I bought it because my i5 was going by the by. Bless you, baby. But if you get the 7.0 and try to stick on it some old stuff, or if I still had the 5.0 or 5S, whatever it was, and I tried to put some 7.0 applications, it doesn't work. With computers, if we try to put new programs on old operating systems, it doesn't work. Now, many of us, here's the trick. Many of us have some old ways of thinking. I'm not good enough. Things don't work for me. I have to work harder than everybody else, and maybe I'll get half as much. God doesn't really love me. And God saved the world, but I got included in, I got grandfathered in, but God would not have done that just for me. Old ways of thinking. Now understand this, as I said to those who were in the retreat last night, in every moment we are every age we've ever been. So some of that old wineskin, some of that old way of thinking, somebody gave to you when you were 5 years old and told you something about yourself. And some of that is still in there and just trying to patch something new on it. It doesn't work when we try to patch new thinking onto the old. And many of us, because of the old thinking, I'm not good enough, things don't work well for me. When things don't work, when the purpose that God has put into you spills out wastefully, for many, it reinforces the narrative that you already had. See there? I'm not good enough. Must have been some sin I committed 20 years ago. Why God won't use me now. Old wineskin. So how do you recognize when you're patching new wineskin onto old? There's no peace inside. When we are using new wineskin and able to allow the new wine to pour freely and powerfully in our lives, we have peace. But also, we can tell because things seem to work, take harder and more work to get it done. When we're using new wineskins with new wine, people pop up to help move us along in what God has called us to do. Some people we never ever would have expected. Grace seems to flow in our lives. We can think more clearly. So what are some old wineskins of thinking that you've been holding on to? Some of us don't want to let go of the old wineskins because we feel like we would be disloyal to someone who taught us that way of thinking. I learned that from my mama, from my daddy, from my church. Maybe they were right and I'm wrong. And that's another way of knowing when you're patching old with new, because you don't trust your own spiritual voice. So here's the deal. Last year, I went on church conference, General Synod for United Church of Christ, and while I was there, because everything told me, go have a hotel room by yourself, I thought I was going to Cleveland for the conference. I went there to have a wilderness experience with God. While I was there, and I didn't get to much of the General Synod at all, I was in my hotel room most of the time I was there, because God was showing me how I was patching some new wineskin onto old. God started showing me some stuff about my old wineskins, such that I became depressed. I thought I was more evolved and more enlightened. I thought I had let go of some old stuff. I thought I had. And God started showing me how, having grown up in the Pentecostal church and hearing songs like 99 and a half won't do, had shaped so much of how I was living in the world, so that part of my old wineskin was to put stuff that I needed to look at about myself, put it away in a closet. As I say to folks, I didn't sweep it under the rug, because I like my emotional space to look clean and clear. So I was shoving it in the closet and acting like nothing was there. I looked like I was fine. Other people said, oh, Reverend Carrie, Dr. Carrie, Carrie, whatever they call me. Oh, you are so wonderful, and you are so holy, and you have such a great relationship with God. And guess what? That was true. But it wasn't the only truth. The stuff in the closet was true too. And God said, baby girl, it's because I love you. I want you to see all of who you are. I see all of you, and I love all of you. Got that stuff out? I became so depressed when I looked at it, because I thought I was more healed and more evolved, and I did not realize the extent to which I was patching old ways of thinking with new. And at times I was wondering, how come all of what you've shown me, God, about my ministry hasn't happened yet? I'm getting ready to be 60. God, you've shown me some incredible things. What is it? Because I started asking God, show me. Show me what it is I'm doing. Not this is what they are doing to me. But God, show me what I'm doing. And God really did. Sisters and brothers, I cannot tell you how much freer I became as a result of letting go of the old wineskins. I see what God's purpose for my life is flowing more freely. Last evening, Reverend Candy Holmes asked the question, are you ready to be made whole? And she preached about Jesus saying to the guy who had been hanging out at the pool of Bethesda for 38 years, are you really ready? then go beyond your circumstances and take up your mat. So I say to you, if you are really ready for God's purpose for your life to flow freely and fully, are you ready to let go of the old wineskins? It can be scary. It can feel disorienting. You might say, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to craft a new wineskin. But here's the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You don't have to do it alone. God doesn't call you, oh, baby, this is what I want you to do, but you go figure out how to do it. That is not our God. Even that way of thinking that God wants me to do such and I got to go figure out how to do it, that's old wineskin. God is not calling any of us to do that which God has called us to by ourselves. God is right here with you, guiding you, keeping you, strengthening you, giving you the wisdom, giving you the vision, bringing the people that you need as resources to help you get it done. Are you ready to live in your full purpose? Because it's only when we do that we truly have full peace. Because when we're not living out who we are called to be, there's always something missing. But if you're ready, ask God to show you what are the old wineskins you're holding on to. And ask God to show you how to let them go. Ask God to show you how to trust God even more, to guide you in the crafting of and the filling of new wineskins. Are you ready? Amen.